Hello and welcome to week 4 and chapter 4 in the history of psychology. And again, an interesting transition in the world of psychology is called the new psychology. Of course, this is dated, and it's the new for the time, the new way of looking at it. And we get introduced to scientific psychology, the stuff of Wilhelm Wundt, and we also have this notion of introspection and projection as a beginning understanding of the way in which psychology works inside of us. So read through that chapter, and the discussion is going to focus on introspection. And that is, how valid is our ability to understand psychology simply by paying attention to our own internal processes and experiences? Now, granted, our constructed schema, if I can borrow that from developmental psych, our constructed schema of what psychology is largely based on our own personal experiences and introspection. My viewpoint is a primary template upon which I build my own ideas of psychology. So, of course, we learn, and we learn there's diversity, and then we learn that there's different ways in which this happens, and there might even be ways in which our brain appears to act, but doesn't. We know that today, but back in the day, really growing from that philosophical background, we're looking at individuals that performed experiments in themselves, or they did things and paid attention to what was going on inside. And when we talk about Wilhelm Wundt, we're looking at an individual who trained his colleagues on a specific method of introspection, and they had to pass his test. This wasn't just, hey, think about it, tell me what you think, which is a lot of what we do today. It's like, no, he had to make sure they had the ability to be somewhat objective about their subjective experiences. And that was part of that science of what he was doing. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion, since no one in this room, no one in this class has gone through that training on how to be objective about your subjective experiences. How biased are we, all of us, in terms of our understanding of psychology, if we're primarily coming from that individual perspective? We then move into the quiz, and I'm asking you to actually conduct for yourself one of the two most famous projective test. This is the thematic apperception test. The other one is the Rorschach. Those are those ink blot tests. Each one of those were considered, and in many cases are considered, good launch points for discussions, still have that sort of nuanced ability for interpretation. If we're given a somewhat vague scene, such as in the thematic apperception test, and we are asked to tell a story, can our inclinations toward one kind of story versus another be interpreted and used by a physician, a psychologist, to go deep inside of your psychology? And I think some of those themes can be very obvious. If someone's depressed, or if someone's angry or frustrated and stuff like that, you can see those themes. But the people who really advocated for these tests said that there was a lot more that we could uncover. So for the quiz, I'm asking you to actually engage in telling a story about an image, and then to the best of your ability, it's actually a little bit of introspection. You don't have another person interpreting the story, or if you want, you can get somebody else to interpret the story, maybe, a friend of yours or a partner. That's okay too, as long as they know what they're doing a little bit. But to think about, if I was in the position to evaluate my psychology, how much could I tell about myself simply by the way I made up that story? So these, again, I'm asking you to sort of experience this time in psychology when there's these early explorations as to there was something going on in between our ears. And introspection and the analysis of projective tests, such as the thematic apperception test and the Rorschach, were the leading edge of psychology at that time. Interesting things, both of those tests are still being used today. And you won't go to a mental health clinic and have that happen, but there are private practitioners and in some places psychiatrists and physicians that use these tools as well. So that is our chapter 4 this week. Enjoy this wonderful weather. Ducks love it. All this rain. I just came back from Michigan, and it was 90 degrees every single day I was there. Came back here, and it was 40 degrees and raining. Welcome back to Maine. So, despite the weather, be well, and I will see you next time.